The human arrived without fanfare, stepping through the airlock with nothing but a small bag and a neutral expression. I remember thinking how underwhelming he looked, soft-skinned, two-legged, and completely lacking any natural defenses. No claws, no armored plates, not even proper fangs. Just a mop of brownish hair on top and those strange, round eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. "This is the translator?" I asked Zorna, my tentacle twitching with skepticism. Zorna's facial ridges fluttered in what I recognized as amusement. "Don't judge by appearances, Krell." The humans sent their best. "His name is Tom Walker." "Tom Walker," I repeated, the name feeling strange in my speech sac. "Sounds simple." "They often are," Zorna replied, "until they are not." The human approached us, extending one of his 5-fingered appendages. I had been briefed on this gesture but still found it uncomfortable to touch a stranger so casually. "Tom Walker, Galactic Diplomatic Corps," he said, his voice surprisingly pleasant for such a fragile-looking species. "Thank you for the welcome, Ambassador Krell and Chief Protocol Officer Zorna." I blinked all 4 of my eyes in succession. "You speak Vexillian? Without a translator?" The human Tom smiled. "I speak 17 galactic standard languages and 12 regional dialects. It's kind of my thing." Zorna shot me a look that clearly said, "I told you so." "Well," I said,
Ovako
trying
kad
to
krene,
regain some
znači treba se
dignity, your
pripremiti odmah za
linguistic abilities
bacanje u
are
vodu,
adequate.
jer nema
But
smisla.
understanding words and understanding the Graken delegation are 2 very different matters. The Graken, Tom nodded, his expression becoming serious. Notoriously difficult negotiators with a culture built around combat metaphors and dominance displays. Their language has 14 different words for surrender, but not a single one for compromise. I couldn't help the surprised chirp that escaped my speech sac. Perhaps this human wasn't as useless as he looked. "The peace talks begin in 6 hours, Zorna added. "The Graken arrived early and are already making demands." "Let me guess," Tom said. "They want bigger quarters, specific atmospheric conditions, and they have already threatened to eat someone's offspring?" I stared at him. "How did you?" "Standard Graken negotiating tactics. They established dominance early." Tom adjusted the strange fabric covering his torso. "Don't worry. I have dealt with worse. The Traxians once tried to dissect me during trade talks because they thought humans kept their brains in their stomachs." Despite myself, I felt a gurgle of laughter rise up. "And how did that end?" "With a very successful mining agreement and a new Traxian holiday called the Day of the Walking Stomach." Tom's face creased into what I would later learn was called a grin. "Shall we meet these Graken?" The Celestial Peace Station was the pride of the Galactic Coalition, a massive, rotating habitat constructed specifically for diplomatic functions. For the past 3 cycles, it had hosted delegations from 17 different species, all attempting to resolve the territorial disputes in the Orion Spur. The Graken-Vexillian conflict was arguably the most volatile of them all. Our species had been engaged in a cold war for over 50 cycles, ever since they claimed the mineral-rich moons of Vexos Prime. As the chief diplomat for my world, I had spent most of my adult life trying to avoid full-scale war with these warmongering brutes. Tom Walker was uncharacteristically quiet as we approached the Graken quarters, his eyes darting around, absorbing every detail. "The Graken value physical prowess above all else," I explained nervously. "Try not to appear weak or they will." Ambassador
Nećeš
Krell,
ubiti.
Tom interrupted gently.
Debilizam,
"With all due
znači
respect,
čisti
I know what I'm
debilizam,
doing."
debilana.
Before I could respond, the doors to the Graken quarters hissed open, and the stench of sulfur and musk assaulted my scent glands. 3 massive Graken warriors stepped out, their scaled hides glistening under the station's lights. Each stood nearly 3 meters tall, with powerful limbs and rows of serrated teeth visible beneath their curled lips. The largest one, wearing ornate armor adorned with what looked suspiciously like Vexillian bone fragments, fixed his yellow eyes on me. So, the spineless diplomat returns. He growled in heavily accented galactic standard. "Have you come to surrender your moons properly this time?" I felt my skin color shifting to pale blue, a shameful display of fear I couldn't control. General Drac, this is. I am Tom Walker of Earth, the human interjected, stepping forward with a confident stride that seemed entirely at odds with his physical vulnerability. I will be translating these negotiations. General Drac and his warriors stared down at the human, then burst into rumbling laughter that seemed to shake the corridor. This? Drake pointed one clawed finger at Tom. This soft thing is your champion? At least bring something we can enjoy crushing. To my horror and amazement, Tom Walker stepped even closer to Drac, tilting his head back to stare directly into those yellow eyes. Freck tak mac vorn dus Graken tier, he said in perfect Graken battle tongue. The corridor went silent. Drac's nostrils flared wide. What did you say to me, human? He growled, leaning down until his teeth were centimeters from Tom's face. Tom didn't flinch. I said, I acknowledge the superior strength of the Graken warriors. Also, I noticed the Corvallian skull fragments on your left pauldron. Nice craftsmanship. Did you kill him yourself? Or was it a gift? Drac's expression shifted from rage to confusion to something approaching respect in the span of seconds. I tore out his throat on the fields of Corva Prime, Drac rumbled, suddenly sounding almost conversational. You know our ways, little human? I make it my business to know, Tom replied. I'm just here to translate, but I respect warriors who have earned their trophies honestly. The Graken general straightened up, his posture subtly changing. Very well, translator. You may live for now. The talks begin in 5 hours. Bring tribute. As the Graken retreated back into their quarters, I released a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. By the 7 moons, Zorna whispered. How did you do that? Tom shrugged, a curiously human gesture. The Graken respect those who acknowledge their strength while displaying courage. It's a delicate balance. And the part about the skull? I asked, still trembling slightly. Research, Tom said simply. I studied all known Graken commanders before coming here. Drac is famous for that kill. He puts the skull fragments on his armor as a reminder of his greatest victory. You have given us a small advantage, I admitted. But the negotiations will still be nearly impossible. The Graken want all 14 moons. We can't survive without at least 8 of them. There's always a solution, Tom said with surprising confidence. Sometimes it just needs the right translation. The negotiations began exactly on schedule, one of the few things the Graken were punctual about. The Great Hall of the Peace Station had been arranged with a large circular table, illuminated by the spectacular view of the nearby nebula through the transparent ceiling dome. The Graken delegation consisted of General Drac and 6 other warriors, each more heavily armed than should have been permitted in peace talks. Our side had myself, Zorna, 3 other diplomats, and Tom Walker, who sat slightly behind me with his strange electronic tablet. Before we begin, I said, rising to my full height, I wish to establish that these talks will adhere to coalition guidelines for enough waste words. Drac slammed his fist on the table, causing the entire structure to shudder. Here are our terms. All 14 moons of Vexos Prime belong to the Graken Empire. Your people may continue mining operations under our supervision for a tax of 80% of all materials extracted. Any resistance will be met with immediate orbital bombardment of your primary settlements. I felt my skin flush purple with indignation. That's not a negotiation. That's an ultimatum. It is generous, Drac growled. We could simply take the moons and exterminate your species. As the translator, Tom should have simply been repeating our words in the respective languages. Instead, he raised his hand slightly, catching my attention. May I offer a point of clarification? He asked quietly. Uncertain but desperate, I nodded. Tom turned to Drac, speaking in that harsh Graken battle tongue again. Whatever he said caused Drac's eyes to narrow and his warriors to shift uncomfortably. What did you tell them? I hissed. I reminded them of the Galactic Coalition's Mutual Defense Pact, Tom whispered, and mentioned that Earth has a particular interest in the stability of this sector. Earth has no stake in our conflict, I pointed out. They don't know that, Tom replied with that strange human expression, again the grin. And humans have a reputation after the Zarn incident. I had heard rumors about the Zarn incident, how a single human ship had somehow defeated an entire Zarn battle fleet. Most considered it propaganda, but the Zarn never again attempted expansion into human territory. The negotiations proceeded for hours, with tempers flaring on both sides. Twice, Graken warriors rose to their feet, hands on weapons, only for Draka to order them back down after a few quiet words from Tom. By the 6th hour, I was exhausted and no closer to a resolution. The Graken still demanded all 14 moons, though they had reduced their tax to 70%. We will adjourn for the day, I finally announced. We will resume tomorrow after both parties have rested. As we filed out, Tom lingered behind, apparently studying something on his tablet. I didn't think much of it until, hours later, Zorna rushed into my quarters. "The human is gone," she exclaimed. "What do you mean, gone?" I sat up from my resting pool. "He's not in his assigned quarters. The station security can't locate him anywhere on the diplomatic level." A cold dread filled my stomachs. Check the Graken quarters. If they have captured him. That's just it. Zorna's vocal sac pulsed with anxiety. Witnesses saw him going there, voluntarily, 3 hours ago. The next morning, I paced outside the negotiation chamber, my skin cycling through worried patterns of green and blue. Tom Walker had still not returned, and the Graken delegation had responded to our inquiries with nothing but laughter. "We must proceed without him," Zorna advised. "The Graken will see any delay as weakness. Without a translator, the Graken will eat us alive, perhaps literally." Before Zorna could respond, the doors to the chamber hissed open. General Drac stood there, his massive frame blocking the entrance. "Enter, Ambassador," he said in passable Vexillian, something I had never heard from a Graken before. "We have much to discuss," but with little choice, I followed him inside. The scene that greeted me defied explanation. The Graken warriors were seated around the table, but instead of bristling with hostility, they appeared relaxed. Several had removed pieces of their armor, and on the table sat containers of what appeared to be Graken fermented beverages alongside Vexillian sweet water. And there, in the midst of them, was Tom Walker. His clothing was torn in several places. A dark bruise colored one side of his face, and his hands were wrapped in bandages stained with both red human blood and the darker ichor of Graken. But he was smiling. "Good morning, Ambassador," Tom called cheerfully. "Hope you don't mind, but we have been having some preliminary discussions." "Preliminary?" I couldn't process what I was seeing. "What happened to you?" "Cultural exchange," Tom said, as if that explained everything. "General Drac has agreed to a new proposal regarding the moons." Drac nodded, his usual snarl replaced by something almost approaching respect. "The human has proven himself worthy of speaking for both sides. We will accept his solution." "Which is?" I asked, completely lost. Tom tapped his tablet. "The Graken will take administrative control of 6 moons specifically, the ones with the most challenging mining conditions. The Vexillians retain the other 8, but establish joint mining operations on all 14. With a 40-60 profit split favoring whichever species controls that particular moon." I blinked rapidly. "They are accepting less than half the moons? And only a slight majority share of the profits? This can't be right." "The human understands what you do not," Drac said. "Our warriors need conquest and challenge. The 6 moons we claim are the most difficult to tame, harsh conditions, dangerous wildlife. They will provide worthy challenges for generations of Graken warriors." Plus, Tom added, the joint operations mean Graken strength combined with Vexillian technical expertise. The total output from the moons will increase by an estimated 30%, meaning even with a smaller percentage, both sides actually gain more resources. This is, I struggled to find words. "Acceptable," Drac finished for me. The human proved the worth of this plan in the ancient way. I looked at Tom's injuries with new understanding. "You fought them?" "Something like that," Tom said with a wince. "Let's just say there was a physical demonstration of the benefits of cooperation." Zorna leaned close to me. "Accept the deal," she whispered urgently. "It's better than we ever hoped for." In a daze, I authorized my portion of the agreement. Drac did the same, pressing his blood-stained claw to the document. "It is done," the Graken general declared. "We leave for our new territories immediately." As the Graken gathered their things, Drac approached Tom and placed a heavy hand on his shoulder. "You fight well for such a soft creature," he said, almost fondly. "The song of your battle will be sung in Graken halls." When they had gone, I turned to Tom in utter disbelief. "What exactly happened last night?" Tom gingerly touched his bruised face. I realized traditional negotiations weren't working, so I approached Drac with a challenge. I suggested that their warriors were becoming soft by only seeking easy conquests. "You insulted the Graken? Deliberately?" Zorna's voice rose to a squeak. "It was a calculated risk," Tom admitted. I challenged Drac to a series of their traditional warrior games to prove my point. I lost most of them, of course. I mean, look at me compared to them, but I kept getting back up. That's what impressed them. Apparently, their warrior code values perseverance as much as victory. "So your injuries," I gestured at his bandaged hands. "Oh, these?" Tom looked down as if noticing them for the first time. "These are actually from the blood oath ceremony. I had to cut my palm to become a Graken blood brother. The bruises are from something they call the binding of wills, basically a ritual headbutting contest." But I stared at him in amazement. "You became a Graken blood brother? In one night?" "Well, it's not official until I kill something with Drac on their homeworld. But it's a start," Tom shrugged, then winced again. "The important thing is we have peace, and a much better deal than either side expected." As we walked toward the medical bay to have his injuries treated, Tom stumbled slightly. I caught him with one tentacle, noticing for the first time just how truly fragile humans were. And yet, "I don't understand," I said. "You were just supposed to translate. How did you end up covered in blood and being applauded by our worst enemies?" Tom's tired face broke into that curious human expression again, the one I was beginning to recognize as pride mixed with amusement. "Sometimes," he said quietly, "the most important things get lost in translation, unless someone is willing to bleed a little to make the meaning clear." Behind us, station personnel were already beginning to whisper. By the end of the day, the story would spread throughout the peace station. By the end of the week, it would reach a dozen worlds. The human who walked into a
Ostavi mu
room of
jedan,
Graken
Bog
warriors
te
and
mazo.
walked out with peace and their respect. He was just there to translate. Nobody expected him to rewrite the terms. Word of the unprecedented peace agreement spread through the celestial peace station like wildfire. The diplomats from 17 species suddenly found reasons to pass by the medical bay where Tom Walker was being treated. Some came with thinly veiled excuses about station protocols, while others openly admitted their curiosity about the human who had accomplished the impossible. "Does it hurt terribly?" I asked, watching the station medic apply regenerative gel to Tom's various wounds. "Not as bad as it looks," Tom replied, though his wince contradicted his words. Graken blood bonding is actually more theatrical than brutal. They make sure it draws blood but avoids serious damage. It's all part of the performance. Performance. Zorna questioned, her tentacles curling in confusion. "That's what most don't understand about the Graken," Tom explained. "Their entire culture is built around performance, displaying strength, courage, and conviction. They respect those qualities even in physically weaker species." The medic, a tall Lutrani with 6 nimble arms, shook her head. "Well, performance or not, you have 3 cracked ribs, a mild concussion, and enough contusions to start your own modern art gallery." "Worth it," Tom said simply. I studied this peculiar human, still struggling to reconcile his fragile appearance with what he had accomplished. The Galactic Coalition will want a full report on how you managed this. Our species have been at the brink of war for 50 cycles, and you resolved it in a single night. Tom sat up carefully, testing his bandaged ribs. Actually, Ambassador Krell, we are not done yet. What do you mean? The agreement is signed. The agreement establishes the framework, yes. But for this to work long-term, we need something more substantial: cultural exchange. Tom's eyes had that determined gleam I was beginning to recognize as dangerous. The problem between your species isn't just about resources. It's about fundamental misunderstanding. The Graken understand only violence, I protested. That's exactly the kind of thinking that leads to war, Tom countered. They understand honor, tradition, and courage as well. You need to see them as more than brutes, and they need to see you as more than weak intellectuals. Zorna's facial ridges pulsed with skepticism. And how do you propose to accomplish that miracle? Tom's face split into that unnerving human expression again. I have invited both delegations to dinner. This is madness, I hissed, pacing the newly arranged banquet hall. Exilians and Graken don't dine together. We don't even eat the same foods. Tom, looking remarkably recovered after just 6 hours of medical treatment, calmly arranged items on the enormous table. That's why I have had the kitchen prepare separate dishes appropriate for each species. The point isn't to share food, it's to share space and conversation. Conversation? I sputtered. What could we possibly discuss with them besides territorial disputes? Art, history, family traditions, Tom suggested. The Graken have a rich artistic culture, believe it or not. Their epic poetry is particularly impressive. Poetry? From the Graken? Zorna couldn't contain her disbelief. Battle poetry, Tom clarified. Stories of great conquests and legendary warriors passed down through generations. It's quite beautiful, in its way. Before we could argue further, the doors hissed open, and the Graken delegation stomped in. On were their full battle armors, replaced by what I assumed were their formal garments, slightly less armored vests covered with medals, trophies, and tribal markings. General Drac approached, scanning the arrangement with suspicious eyes. What is this, human? Another test? Not a test, Tom assured him. An opportunity. Great warriors understand their enemies, do they not? Drac grunted what might have been agreement. The strongest hunter studies its prey. Exactly, Tom said smoothly. Though tonight no one is prey. Tonight we are simply representatives of two great civilizations with much to learn from each other. To my astonishment, Drac actually seemed to consider this. Very well. But no trickery or our agreement is void. No trickery, Tom promised. Just food, drink, and stories. The initial hour was excruciating. Both delegations sat rigidly on opposite sides of the table, barely touching their food, while Tom valiantly attempted to spark conversation. His efforts were met with monosyllabic responses from the Graken and nervous chitters from my team. Then Tom tried a different approach. General Drac, he said casually. Ambassador Krell was just expressing admiration for Graken battle poetry. Perhaps you might share one of your famous epics. I shot Tom a horrified look, which he pointedly ignored. Drac's yellow eyes narrowed, shifting between Tom and me. The Vexillion appreciates our warrior verses. Before I could stammer a denial, Tom answered for me. He mentioned that Vexillion historical archives actually contain translations of several ancient Graken poems reserved from before the conflicts began. Isn't that right, Ambassador? Put on the spot, I could only nod weakly. A strange rumble emanated from Drac's chest, something I eventually realized was consideration, not anger. The Ballad of Voktar the Unyielding is most appropriate for diplomatic gatherings, Drac finally declared. It speaks of honor in defeat as well as victory. What followed was utterly surreal. The fearsome Graken general rose to his full height and began to recite "No," perform a complex rhythmic chant in the Graken language. His warriors joined in at certain points, creating a rumbling chorus that seemed to vibrate through the station floor. Tom leaned toward me. He's recounting the story of a legendary Graken warrior who fought an unwinnable battle against an ancient enemy. Rather than surrender, he found a way to turn defeat into a different kind of victory through an honorable death that inspired future generations. As the performance continued, I found myself oddly moved by the passion in Drax's voice, even without understanding the words. There was genuine emotion there, pride, reverence, and something almost like sadness. When he finished, an awkward silence fell. Tom looked at me expectantly. That was surprisingly beautiful, I admitted, my skin flushing a deep purple of sincerity before I could control it. Drax's expression shifted subtly. You understand the warrior's sacrifice? I understand honoring one's ancestors and seeking to inspire future generations, I replied carefully. In our culture, we do this through scientific advancement rather than battle, but the core principle is similar. A grunt from Drax. Perhaps not entirely without wisdom for soft creatures. It wasn't exactly a compliment, but coming from a Graken, it was practically a declaration of respect. Perhaps, Tom suggested, Ambassador Krell could share the Vexillian creation myth. The one about the 17 tentacles of knowledge? And somehow, impossibly, I found myself recounting our most sacred cultural story to a group of Graken warriors, beings I had spent my career fearing and opposing. Even more incredibly, they actually listened, occasionally asking questions that revealed genuine curiosity rather than mockery. As the evening progressed, the rigid separation between our delegations gradually dissolved. A Graken warrior named Borgat engaged Zorna in a surprisingly detailed discussion about underwater navigation techniques. My science attaché found himself explaining Vexillian reproductive cycles to two fascinated Graken elders. Tom moved between groups, occasionally translating complex concepts, but mostly just facilitating, making sure neither side retreated back into hostility or suspicion. How are you doing this? I asked him during a brief moment alone. I'm not doing anything, Tom replied. I'm just creating the space for both sides to see each other as people rather than enemies. Your species aren't that different, fundamentally. You both value honor, tradition, and excellence. You just express those values differently. I was about to argue when a commotion erupted across the room. One of the younger Graken warriors had accidentally knocked over a container of Vexillian ceremonial water onto a Vexillian diplomat's formal robes. In our culture, such an action could be interpreted as a grave insult. I rushed over, certain that our fragile peace was about to shatter. But before I could intervene, Tom was there. An excellent opportunity, he declared loudly. For a demonstration of the Vexillian water ritual, yes? The confused Vexillian diplomat Plex, a usually reserved academic, looked to me for guidance. I had no idea what Tom was suggesting, but nodded desperately. Tom turned to the Graken. On Vexillia, spilled water is seen as an opportunity for renewal. They have a ceremonial response that shows how they turn accidents into advantages, much like how Graken warriors turn battlefield setbacks into strategic opportunities. This was complete fabrication, but the Graken were watching with interest now. Plex, bless his quick mind, caught on immediately. Yes, the water renewal ritual. He gracefully extended his tentacles into the spilled liquid, then raised them, letting the droplets catch the light. From disorder comes new patterns of understanding, he improvised. Just as water finds new paths when blocked, so too must thinking beings
Hoćemo li
seek new
šta
ways
pogodi
forward
danas,
when old
Bog
routes
te
are
mazo?
closed. The Graken warrior who had caused the spill looked impressed rather than
Bog
aggressive.
te.
Your people find wisdom in accidents? We try to find wisdom everywhere, Plex replied, gaining confidence. It is our way. Not unlike how we find honor in every battle, even defeats, the young Graken mused. An older Graken warrior grunted approvingly. Perhaps these tentacled ones are not so spineless after all. By the end of the evening, something remarkable had happened. Not friendship. Exactly centuries of hostility couldn't be erased in a single night, but a foundation of mutual respect had been laid. As the Graken prepared to depart, General Drac approached Tom and me. The joint mining operations will begin within 30 cycles, he declared. We will send our strongest engineers to work alongside your scientists. We look forward to a productive partnership, I replied, surprised to find I actually meant it. Drac turned to Tom. You are strange, human. You have no claws, no armor, and your bones break easily. Yet you have the heart of a true warrior. I praise, Tom said with a slight bow. Though I consider myself more of a bridge builder than a warrior. Sometimes, Drake rumbled, building bridges requires more courage than waging war. He clasped Tom's shoulder with surprising gentleness. You still owe me a hunt on the Graken homeworld, blood brother. I look forward to it, Tom replied, though I noticed he winced slightly at the pressure on his still healing shoulder. After the Graken had departed, the Vexillian delegation gathered around Tom in stunned silence. I still don't understand how you did it, Zorna said, her voice filled with wonder. Humans have a unique perspective, Tom explained. We are not the strongest species in the galaxy, or the smartest, or the most technologically advanced. But we understand something fundamental about different cultures. Which is? I prompted. That beneath all the obvious differences, the biology, the customs, the values, there's always some common ground. You just have to be willing to bleed a little to find it. 2 days later, both delegations were preparing to depart the peace station. The formal agreements had been logged with the Galactic Coalition, and preliminary teams were already being assembled for the joint mining ventures.
Joj, debil Čína, znači.
I
Joj,
found Tom in
debila
the
ne,
observation
Bože.
deck, staring out at the swirling nebula beyond the station. Your shuttle leaves in 2 hours, I noted, settling beside him. The Galactic Diplomatic Corps must be eager to hear your report. I imagine they are, Tom agreed, though something in his tone caught my attention. You don't seem excited to return. Tom smiled faintly. Don't get me wrong, I love my work. But sometimes the aftermath is complicated. Complicated how? The Corps sent me here to translate, not to negotiate a historic peace agreement, he explained. While they will be pleased with the outcome, they tend to get nervous when their people exceed their mandates. But you have accomplished something remarkable. Surely they will recognize that. Oh, they will. They will probably give me a medal, make me write a detailed report on my methodology, and then stick me behind a desk for 6 months to process the experience. Tom sighed. Bureaucracy is pretty much the same across the galaxy.
Jevo, te bo.
I was shocked.
Debila
That
ne.
seems wasteful of your talents. It's temporary. They will eventually need me for another impossible situation, and I will be back out here. He gestured toward the stars. It's worth it, though. Days like yesterday make all the bureaucratic headaches worthwhile. We stood in companionable silence for a moment, watching the cosmic dust swirl in
Ako
patterns
ljudi
both chaotic
znaju
and
šta
beautiful.
rade, ne mogu ja ništa uraditi.
There's
Ako ne
something I
znaju
have
šta
been
rade, ne
wanting
mogu da
to ask you,
pobjedim.
I finally said. That
Debilana
night
u
with the
svakom
Graken,
slučaju.
when you disappeared for hours, what really happened? Beyond the official explanation, Tom's expression became thoughtful. The official report says I engaged in traditional Graken bonding rituals to establish trust and respect. And the unofficial version? The unofficial version is that I got my ass kicked 6 ways to Sunday. Tom laughed, then winced and touched his ribs. But somewhere between the 3rd and 4th beating, when I kept getting back up, something changed. Drakic started looking at me differently. Not as prey, but as, I don't know, maybe something worthy of consideration. And that's when you proposed the moon-sharing arrangement? Actually, no, that's when Drac decided I should join his war council. Tom's eyes twinkled with remembered amusement. He was quite serious about adopting me into his clan. I had to convince him I could be more valuable as a neutral intermediary. I blinked all 4 eyes in succession. He wanted to adopt you. A human? The Graken value determination above physical strength when it comes down to it, Tom explained. They just rarely encounter it in species they consider weaker than themselves. The station's announcement system chimed softly, indicating the imminent departure of several shuttles. I should let you prepare for your journey, I said reluctantly. Ambassador Krell, Tom said, turning to face me fully, it's been an honor working with you. I have a feeling the Vexillian-Graken partnership is going to change this sector for the better. Thanks to you, I acknowledged. I must admit, when they first told me they were sending a human translator, I had doubts. Everyone does, Tom grinned. That's our secret advantage. As we walked toward the docking bay, I noticed station personnel stopping to watch Tom pass. Some nodded respectfully, others whispered behind appendages. Word had spread quickly the human who had brokered peace between ancient enemies, who had stood toe-to-toe with Graken warriors and somehow earned their respect. Will you come back? I asked as we reached the departure area. Perhaps for the first anniversary of the agreement. I'd like that, Tom said. Besides, I apparently have a ritual hunt to attend.
Da, još jedna debilana.
Maybe
Nema
you
od
could
toga
join
ništa.
us? The very thought made my skin ripple with anxiety patterns. I think I will leave the blood sports to you humans. Probably wise, Tom laughed. Though I suspect there's more warrior in you than you realize, Ambassador. As he turned to board his shuttle, I called after him.
Da, debilana još jedna, znači,
One last
nula
question.
da se
You
uradi
have done
opet.
this before, haven't you? This wasn't your first impossible negotiation. Tom paused on the boarding ramp. Let's just say there's a reason they send
Da,
humans
vidimo
to
da
the
mogu
most
da
difficult
provučem tu na
situations.
KV2.
We have a knack for finding connections where others see only differences, and getting covered in blood in the
Naravno da
process.
ne može.
I added dryly. His laughter echoed down the corridor. That part varies from mission to mission. But yes,
Jebeni
occasionally blood is
RNG,
involved.
jebeni
It's worth it, though, to build peace. I watched his shuttle
motherfuckers.
depart from the observation deck, a tiny speck of light
Tražio
soon
sam da
lost
mi
among the
vratiš što sam
stars.
kupio
In
tenka,
the days and
znači.
weeks that followed, I would often think about Tom Walker, the unremarkable-looking human, who had walked into our conflict as a simple translator and walked out having fundamentally changed
Gledao
two
sada.
civilizations.
Ubiše ga.
The first joint mining operation began 3 weeks later. To everyone's surprise, Graken's strength combined with Vexillian technical expertise proved even more effective than projected. Production increased by 47% in the first cycle alone. 6 months after
Bravo.
that, the first cultural exchange program was established. Young Vexillian scientists spent time on Graken worlds learning their battle strategies and physical training methods, while Graken warriors came to study Vexillian research techniques and underwater architecture. A year to the day after the historic agreement, a small commemorative ceremony was held on Vexos Prime. General Drak and I stood side by side, still not friends.
Ništa.
Exactly. But
Ništa,
respectful
nigdje
allies
nema
as we
ništa.
unveiled a simple monument on the largest moon. The
Najgora
monument
mapa.
depicted two
Mapa ni
hands,
zašta
one
nije.
scaled and clawed, one smooth with 5 fingers clasped together. Between them was a small phrase written in 3 languages, Vexillian, Graken, and English.
Jess, niko ne kliče gdje sam
Sometimes,
artiljerije
I read
to.
aloud, the most important things get lost in translation unless someone is willing to bleed a little to make the meaning clear. Drak nodded his massive head. The human's words, wise for one so
baš,
soft.
kad ja opucam,
He
koliko
promised to
to mene
return for this ceremony, I noted, looking up at the stars visible even in the
Tako
moon's
se
thin
vidi, znači,
atmosphere.
otprilike.
I wonder what kept him away. Drak's expression shifted to something almost like a smile, a frightening sight on a Graken face. Perhaps he is bleeding somewhere else in the galaxy, building more bridges. Perhaps I agreed. Later that evening, as the celebration continued, I received a message on my personal communication device. It contained no sender information, just a short text and an attached image. Sorry to miss the ceremony. Got tied up in negotiations on Proxima E. Looks like your partnership is thriving. 2. The image showed Tom Walker, his face bruised but smiling, standing between 2 towering insectoid beings. All 3 were covered in some kind of blue ceremonial paint, or possibly blood. I couldn't help but laugh. Somewhere out there among the stars, a single unremarkable human was changing the galaxy, one translation at a time and frequently walking away covered in blood to the sound of applause.
Maja.
He was supposed to just translate. Nobody expected him to rewrite history.
Joj, pa do kraja se ne... Jaj.
Fleet Commander Zor Akake of the Galactic Hegemony stared at the intelligence report with all
Znači, više
4
nego
of his
što sam ja
eyes
mislio.
bulging in disbelief. His
Više nego
crimson
što sam
scales
mislio.
bristled along his spine as he read the document for the 6th time. This cannot possibly be correct, he muttered, tossing the data pad onto his command console. Admiral Vex Tool, please explain to me how a single human transport ship managed to obliterate an entire hegemony patrol fleet. Admiral Vex Tool, a tall, willowy creature with iridescent skin and 6 limbs, shifted uncomfortably.
Znao
The
sam da je
report is
govno, da će
accurate,
biti govno
Commander.
partija.
The human vessel Golden Years was approached by Patrol Squadron 7 at the edge of the Orion Arm. When ordered to submit to standard inspection, how do the humans say it? They went ballistic. A civilian transport? With elderly humans? Zorak's voice rose to a pitch that made the bridge officers wince. Yes, Commander. All humans aboard were between 65 and 92 Earth years old. What the patrol didn't realize was that they were all former military personnel. Zorak and no one thought to check their
Ne
backgrounds
do
before
Bog,
demanding
znači
they
da
open their
pogodim
cargo
nešto.
holds. That's the curious part, sir. They were properly registered as retired military. We just didn't understand what that meant in human terms. The commander swiveled his chair toward the massive view screen, which currently displayed the wreckage of 7 hegemony warships drifting in the cold vacuum of space. Please enlighten me, Admiral. X-Tool called up a holographic display. In most civilized species, military retirement means the individual is no longer physically or mentally capable of combat operations. They are moved to administrative roles or released entirely from service due to diminished capabilities. As is proper, Zor-AK nodded. Humans are different. Their retirement doesn't indicate reduced capability. It merely signifies they have served their contractually obligated time. Most importantly, Vex Tool's voice dropped dramatically. It means they are no longer bound by military rules of engagement or chain of command. Zor-Ak's jaw dropped. Are you telling me they deliberately release their most dangerous warriors into civilian society with no oversight? Exactly, Commander. And they give them pensions, which many use to purchase private spacecraft and weapons. A junior intelligence officer stepped forward, clutching her own datapad. Sir, if I may? Our xenopsychologists believe humans actually become more dangerous as they age, not less. They lose physical strength, yes, but this is offset by accumulated combat experience, reduced fear response, and a condition humans call not giving a crap anymore. Zor-AK stared at her.
Not giving a crap
Not giving
anymore.
a, what does that mean? It's difficult to translate precisely, Commander, but it appears to be a psychological state where the human no longer concerns themselves with consequences, protocols, or even survival in some cases. They simply do whatever they want. Monstrous, whispered Zor-AK. And these are the creatures we have been trying to integrate into the hegemony? There's more, sir. Vex Tool continued. We have analyzed the combat footage. These elderly humans dismantled a patrol fleet with terrifying efficiency. They knew exactly where to hit our ships, how to neutralize our weapons systems, and how to exploit every weakness in our tactical doctrine. How is that possible? Our tactical manuals are highly classified. The intelligence officer coughed nervously. They didn't need manuals, sir. The oldest human aboard, Captain Eleanor Blackburn, age 92, helped develop the countermeasures to our defense systems 60 years ago. She literally wrote the book on how to defeat hegemony warships. Zor-AK felt a cold dread seeping through his body. And we just let them wander the galaxy? With all that knowledge? It gets worse, Vex Tool said grimly. Human military retirement benefits include something called Space Veterans discounts on weapons, shield generators, and engine modifications. The Golden Years was carrying enough firepower to level a small moon. The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. Finally, Zor-AK spoke.
Hoćemo li, znači, aha, krenula je.
Vex Tool brought up a star chart.
Ma ništa, izgleda ćemo
That's the
orgasta
concerning part,
countove.
sir. After destroying
Hvala
the patrol
lipo,
fleet,
znači
they sent a tight
debilana
beam
igre.
transmission to Earth military command. The only part we intercepted was, and I quote, those scaled idiots tried to search our booze cabinet. Permission to gather the gang? The gang? What gang? We believe, the intelligence officer said, scrolling through her notes, it refers to other retired human military personnel. Specifically, the surviving members of something called Operation Cosmic Thunder, a classified Earth military unit from 50 years ago. And what was this unit known for? Zorek asked, already dreading the answer. Hegemony ship capture and sabotage, sir. Zorek stood abruptly, his scales now
Da
pale with
vidimo,
fear.
da li ćemo moći
Send a
pogoditi
priority
toga.
alert to all hegemony vessels. Avoid contact with any ship identified as carrying retired human military personnel. If encountered, treat with extreme courtesy, grant immediate passage, and under no circumstances attempt to board or search their vessels. There's one more thing, Commander Vextil said quietly. Earth Military Command sent a response to the Golden Years. We intercepted it in full. And? It was 3 words, sir. Retirement means permission. Zorek sank back into his chair. What does that mean? Our linguists are still debating the exact cultural context, but it appears to mean that Earth Command was reminding them that as retirees, they no longer need military authorization to engage in hostile activities. They gave them permission to not need permission, Zorek whispered, horrified.
Može iz toga.
Precisely, sir. Aboard the Golden Years, Captain Eleanor Blackburn smiled as she poured another round of whiskey for her crew in the ship's comfortable lounge. At 92, her hands were gnarled with arthritis, but they still moved with precision as she filled each glass without spilling a drop. Well, that was invigorating, she said, her voice raspy from decades of shouting orders in battle and enjoying fine liquor afterward. Haven't had that much fun since the Battle of Proxima Centauri. First Officer Jack Ramirez, a spry 78-year-old with a titanium leg and a collection of scars that told stories better than any history book, raised his glass. To the good old days, which are apparently still happening. Those poor bastards had no idea what they were getting into, chuckled weapons specialist Dana Morris, her silver haircut in the same military style she'd worn for 60 years. At 85, but her aim with the ship's point defense systems had been flawless. Did you see their faces on the view screen when I took out their flagship's engines? Priceless. What did they expect? Eleanor shrugged, sipping her whiskey. Poking around a ship full of bored veterans looking for an excuse to dust off their skills. It's like they were asking for a lesson. Communications Officer Benjamin Zhao, the baby of the group at 65, looked up from his console. Captain, I have been monitoring hegemony channels. They are scrambling. Big time. Looks like they are issuing fleet-wide orders to avoid any contact with human retirees. Smart move. Eleanor nodded approvingly. Took them long enough to figure it out. What's Earth saying? Command sent the standard retirement means permission response. Officially, they are issuing a diplomatic protest for the unprovoked aggression against a civilian vessel. Dana howled with laughter, slapping her knee. That's rich. We are carrying enough ordnance to start a small war. Technically, we are civilian, Jack pointed out, his voice deadpan. We just happen to be extremely well-armed civilians with extensive combat training and nothing better to do. Eleanor finished her drink and stood, stretching her back until it popped satisfyingly. The best part about being retired is not having to file reports. No paperwork, no oversight committees, no explaining why you decided to use a nuclear mine instead of following proper first contact protocols. Remember that time on Kepler 442 billion? Dana asked, eyes twinkling with mischief. When Admiral Hoffman had to explain to the Senate why we accidentally blew up that moon? 2 weeks of hearings, Jack groaned. If we'd been retired then, it would have been a non-issue. Which is precisely why the hegemony should be terrified, Eleanor said, her voice suddenly serious. They have spent decades studying Earth's active military, learning our protocols, our rules of engagement, our chains of command. But they have completely overlooked the most dangerous humans in the galaxy. The ones with nothing to lose and everything to prove? Benjamin asked. The ones with experience, grudges, and Medicare, Eleanor corrected him. Now, let's make some calls. If the hegemony wants to start playing rough with Earth vessels, I think it's time for a little reunion tour. Operation Cosmic Thunder rides again? Jack's eyes lit up with anticipation. Eleanor's smile would have made a shark proud. The kids have had their turn. Time to show them how the old guard handles a galactic crisis. God help the hegemony, Dana whispered, though her tone suggested she believed no such help would be forthcoming. On Hegemony Central Command, an emergency council had been convened. Representatives from all 12 member species sat around a massive table, with Zor AK standing at the head, looking haggard. The situation is graver than we initially believed, he announced without preamble. Our intelligence indicates that the Golden Years incident has triggered what humans call a phone tree. A biological weapon? Gasped a gelatinous representative from the Molucci Confederation. No, sighed Vex Tool. It means they are calling their friends. Specifically, every retired military vessel in this sector is changing course, converging near the site of the patrol fleet's destruction. A holographic display showed dozens of small ships altering their trajectories, forming a loose but unmistakable gathering. How many? Asked a crystalline being from the Silicon Collective. 57 vessels confirmed so far, with more responding, Vex Tool replied. Each crewed by humans over the age of 65, each heavily armed, and each operating without any official oversight from Earth Command. This is outrageous. Thundered the Molucci representative, ripples of anger visibly moving through its translucent body. Earth must control its citizens. Zor AK laughed bitterly. That's the point, Counselor. They don't want to. This is a feature of their system, not a flaw. They have essentially created a reserve force of deniable assets that can act without implicating their government. Surely they wouldn't risk war over one incident, said the Silicon representative, facets glittering with concern. The intelligence officer, who had been standing quietly in the corner, stepped forward again. Sir, permission to share the latest intercept? Zor AK nodded wearily. We captured a transmission from the Golden Years to another vessel called Arthritis Avenger. The captain, this Eleanor Blackburn, said, and I'm quoting directly Liam, "You old son of a bitch, dust off your combat boots. The hegemony just gave us an excuse to relive our glory days. Bring beer and ammunition, lots of both. Eleanor out. Yee." The council chamber erupted in panicked conversation. Zor AK raised his hands for silence. There's more. We have identified this Liam as Admiral Liam O'Connor, former head of Earth's Special Warfare Division.
Ljebe, dragi. Gdje kasniš, druška, ne.
His ship is loaded with experimental weapons that officially don't exist. How do we stop this? Demanded the Molucci. Vex Tool and Zor AK exchanged glances. That's the problem, Zor AK said slowly. We can't stop them through military means. Any aggression will only attract more of them. And Earth Command will maintain plausible deniability, while these civilian retirees wreak havoc across our territories. Then we must negotiate, declared the Silicon representative. Offer reparations for the patrol fleet's actions. Already attempted, Vex Tool said grimly. We sent a diplomatic communique offering full apologies and compensation. Captain Blackburn responded with a message so profane our translators initially classified it as a new language. The only clear part was, we don't want your money. We want entertainment. Zor AK looked out at the concerned faces around him. Council members, we face an unprecedented threat. A flotilla of human vessels crewed by their most experienced warriors, operating without rules, seeking entertainment.
Yep.
The worst part is, their government is legally powerless to rein them in, even if they wanted to, which they don't, added Vex Tool. Our sources in Earth government indicate their official position is, they served their time, they earned their freedom. What they do in retirement is their business. In the silence that followed, the intelligence officer's data pad chimed. She checked it, and her scales turned almost white. Commander, she said, her voice barely audible. The retirement community on Luna just chartered 15 cruise ships. All passengers are former military. They are citing
Idemo!
emergency deployment of reserve
Kad
assets under
krećemo
an
prema ovoj
obscure
strani,
Earth
sigurno
law
znate
that
na što
apparently
se
allows
misli.
military retirees to self-organize in times of crisis. But there is no crisis. Zor AK shouted, "We have apologized. We are standing down." Sir, the officer replied,
Idemo!
"With respect
Ne,
to human
nećeš
culture,
ni se davala.
This is the crisis. The older generation gets to prove they are still relevant. This isn't just about our patrol fleet anymore. This is about something humans call showing the youngsters how it's done." Zor AK looked around the room, seeing the dawning horror on every alien face as they realized what they were up against, not Earth's military, with its rules and restraints, but something far more terrifying: humans with experience, weapons, and absolutely nothing to lose. "May the stars have mercy on us all," he whispered, "because I doubt human retirees will." 3 days
Idemo,
after the
pogodi
Golden
sve.
Years incident, the hegemony border outpost Sentinel-17 detected an unusual energy signature approaching from the direction of Earth space. Commander Grell, a veteran of countless border skirmishes, peered at the sensor readings with growing unease. "What are we looking at?" he asked his sensor officer, a young Vexillian named Priel. "Unknown, sir. It's not matching any propulsion system in our database." Priel's tentacles worked furiously over the controls. "The energy output is inconsistent. It pulses, almost like it's being deliberately modulated." "Stealth system?" "No, sir. Quite the opposite. It's extremely visible, almost as if they want us to see them coming." Grell finished grimly. "Magnify visual sensors." The view screen flickered
sad sam
and
malo
revealed a
kasnio.
sight that caused every officer on the bridge to freeze. A formation of 15 vessels approached, but unlike any military formation
Da,
Grell
vidimo.
had ever seen. The ships weren't in any
Da.
recognizable attack pattern.
Uspio
Instead, they seemed to be constantly
zajebti. Ma
shifting
zajebti ovo
position,
više.
sometimes nearly colliding, other times spreading far apart, but always moving forward with inexorable purpose. "What in the seven hells are they doing?" Grell whispered. The communications officer's console chimed. "Sir, we are receiving a
Thank you
transmission
very
from the
much.
lead vessel.
Fuck off.
Audio only." "Put
Fuck
it
off.
through."
Fuck off.
A gravelly human voice filled
Very
the
much.
bridge,
Fuck off very
accompanied
much.
by what sounded like, was that music in the background? "Attention, Hegemony Border Station. This is Admiral Liam O'Connor of the Arthritis Avenger. We